All right, yes. Okay, so we're all set up to start the workshop now. Okay, we're going to go back to VS Code and we're going to go back to our workshop 3 project that we were working on. That I had open. Okay, so this is the project as it was previously. If you remember what happened yesterday, I guess, we had all these different URL patterns. Just the basic homepage. We had a homepage where you can enter a name and it would say a hello message. We had a route to make a person. We had a route to get like a bunch of people who are above 18 and list them out. And we had a route to get the pets for a particular user based on the name. And this might be a valid sort of management system, right? But it's not what you typically think of when you're thinking of a web app. What you're typically thinking of is more something that has a styling and stuff like that, where you're clicking buttons on the page and where you have a nice user interface across devices. So I'll start off by focusing on that today. I'll start off by actually focusing a bit on the user experience. So let's go back to our homepage and see how we can improve what we currently have. And to do that, let me just go to the actual page. Okay, if we go back to our original page, I'm going to close all the other tabs. Yeah, okay. If we go back to our original page, we see that we have an enter your name box, an input for your name, and then a submit button, which will take us onto the next page. And if you forget what that actually works, how that actually works, if we enter the name Alice, for example, and then click submit, click submit here, we get to this page home to /Alice, which is unidentified person because we deleted Alice. What was the thing? It was Kathy. Kathy was defined. Yes, Kathy's defined. So we say, welcome to homepage 2, Kathy is 3 years old. Right? That was the functionality we had. This is obviously not what you want a polished product to be looking like. You want a polished product to have like a nice looking form with a custom input that suits the style of the page. So very quickly, I'm just going to do some go through how to CSS. Oh, hello. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we're just continuing off from the workshop 3 example we were working off last time. Essentially, we have this page where you can enter your name, you can click submit, and it takes you to this page where if the user is a registered person, oh, there he's gone. Sure. Okay, so let's just continue. So now we want the actual page to have good styling in such a way that people can understand it better, right? Not even better, but people have a nicer time using the site rather than something that's come from like 1950 when the internet was invented. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back here and we're going to go to our HTML, our home.html. And if you remember what we had, essentially we had these 3 text elements, essentially. The enter your name input, a label, and we had the actual input itself, the text box, and then we had this button which said submit. Okay, and the first thing you might want to do is, let's just say you wanted to add some colors to things, right? Now, the good way to do this is to separate out all your styling into a separate style block, which lives in a separate file or lives in this file in a style tag. We're going to keep it here in this file in the style tag for the sake of simplicity. So if we have style like that, I don't want it to generate a code. I don't want to be banging examples, right? The first thing you can do is utilize the sort of different selectors that CSS provides. So let's say we wanted all labels to have a particular color text, right? We could just say label, and then we could say label with curly braces means that all elements which have the tag of label will have the following style, and the style will say is color red. Notice color is spelled American because it is. So it's COLOR rather than color being OUR. So we're going to say this is color red, right? And we're going to go back to our page and refresh it. And now you can see, yes, the label here, the text is red. The button here is not a label, so its text is not red, right? All right. How might you go about making the button text red? Sure. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, feel free to answer via chat. Okay, how would you go about making the button text red? You've gotten the label text being red, so just think about it. How would the button text also be made red? You also think of the answer to that question. Exactly. We do the same thing, but replace label with button. So what we can do, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this here. We can go button, have our curly braces, and then click enter, and then go color red. And this would work, right? We can have, if you refresh the home page again, you can see submit is now red, right? But this feels slightly inefficient. If consider the laziness of people, right? We don't want to type out if two elements have the same style. We don't want to type names out twice, right? We don't want to type out the curly braces twice. We don't want to type out the style twice. So instead, what we might do here is combine these two. And the way we can combine these two is by using a comma. So if you go label, button, and then refresh the page, you can see that these two elements are still having red colored text, right? Because by having the comma separated, what we're essentially just saying is, I mean, rather obviously, the label and button both have the styles applied to them. Yeah. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is go through some more useful styling than just changing the color of the button or button text or whatever. So let's just remove this. Instead, is that you? Why are you joining? Hi. You're just okay. You're just on the meeting, I guess. Sure. Okay. So we have the label and the button currently. We're going to change. We're going to make some more useful stuff. Now, a particularly useful style that you might want to, a particularly useful selector that you might want to use is something like body. Because all elements live in the body, if you keep any styling in the body, all styling in the body applies to every element. So we could do something like font family. Font family. And then we could set it to, we can set it to Arial and then sans serif. Sure, we'll take this example. Okay. Given that the font names are familiar, what do you think this time? What do you think what do you think the font family selector does in CSS? Not selector, sorry, property. What do you think the font family property represents? Given that the value we've given is Arial, Helvetica, sans serif. Think about it. Okay. Essentially, what it means is that the fonts used in the body will be Arial, and if Arial isn't found in the browser, then you'll use Helvetica. And if Helvetica is also not found in the browser, it will default to the base tier sans serif font. Because sans serif is featured as a default font across all browsers. So it is a very safe fallback to have. And now, if you run this again, or if you go back to the page and refresh it, you can see now the font's changed, right? This used to be a serif font. Oh, by the way, serif means that the endings have like little crosses at the end, like, and then sans serif is without those little things that make it look like printed text. This is more like typed text, right? So yeah, that's an example of something we can do. We can also do. There's also properties like font weight, right? In the same vein of using fonts. So you could say font weight bold, right? I mean, over to you. What do you think font weight bold means in this scenario?
Wait.
Font weight.
Is it something size?
The font weight being no, font size is different to font weight. You're saying the font weight is bold, right? What could that mean in this instance? We are literally making the text bold. We are making it bold. Rather than increasing or decreasing the size, we are making the text bolder. And again, yes, we could just go back to the site and check this works. We can verify that. And yes, you can see that this text here has been made bold because of font weight bold. Very interestingly, though, if you go back to this page, you will see that the submit text is not bold. Can you guess why it's not bold? Both of you. Give me your best guess as to why the submit text in that button is not bold. And we set the font weight to bold for everything in the body.
Can you go back to code?
Go back to code, sure. Here's the code. It's just the thing, the style tag.
It's just a single style tag.
Yeah, it's just the font weight bold. I set the font weight bold for every element in the body. So why is the button text not bold?
Is that about the bracket?
Hmm?
Is it for the bracket?
What bracket? It's not a syntax issue, by the way. This is intended behavior. This is how CSS is designed to run. It's not an actual problem with the code. I'm going to assume that you haven't got a hypothesis, both of you, and then I'll just explain how that works. Basically, a button has its own inbuilt style, right? When we go back to this page, right, we can see the button clearly has its own style. It has this box, it has a It has a behavior when you hover the box. And then it also has clearly that the font weight of text inside the box is going to be normal. It's not going to be bold. So, key principle here. I'm just gonna write this on the board. This is going to be key principle 1 when working with CSS. Why is my camera not showing this video level? Okay, principle 1. Styling selectors have a hierarchy, right? And by that I mean, if you select a particular style, if a style is applied to something which is of a which is higher up in the hierarchy, but there is already a style in the selector that's more specific, then the style that is more specific takes precedence over the one that's been defined over the higher hierarchy. So the styling of the body is overruled by the styling of the button, the default styling of the button. And we can see this if we do inspect element, right? So we're just going to inspect element. So if we inspect and we go to the button, we can see that the font for both the font family selection and the font weight selection have been overridden by this button styling, right? Let me just see if I can get the font family just for demonstration. You can see that the font family is actually defined to be empty. So it's just going to use whatever the default font of the browser is for the button. That's by default. And obviously that might not be great, right? Then you might want to force the font family and the text being bold on the button if you wanted consistency, for example. And here's how to do that. So we're going to go back to here. And what we want to do now is make the style that we defined in the body more important than the style defined in the button for the button. Is this still on?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to make the styling defined in the body more important than the styling we defined in the button. And the way to do that is quite simple. We simply add exclamation mark important to the end of this particular style. And this will make font weight bold apply to all of the more specific, apply with a greater level of hierarchy than any other style that the button has already defined. So now, if you save this and go back, don't restart the servers. Oh yeah, turning a. I have to rerun the server quickly. Huh. What is going on? Now that is a weird thing. Okay, let's see what's happening. Right. Why is important being overridden? And I believe the issue is that button has exclamation mark important after its styling. So you're going to need to apply styling to the button directly, right? So what we're actually going to need to do here is to, rather than do this, we have to apply the styles directly to the button. So we can do body, comma, button. Right, and now you know the styles apply to the button in this particular case. Let me show another case where this hierarchy thing actually works properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a span, and a span is just a block of text that goes on your page. So we're just going to add our span in here, span, and we're going to say text here. All right, and now what we're going to say is we're first going to give the span no styling at all. All right. So if you give the span no styling at all, you can see that because the body has the bold and uh, the bold text and the font family enforced, the span has that styling enforced upon it because it doesn't have its own styling to override it. But if we add that style, let's say we say span, we're going to say font weight normal. Well, I'm going to say font weight 100, which makes it as thin as possible, really. But if you're using numbers for font weight, it counts up in 100, not in lesser numbers. Small trap. But you can say the span has a font weight of 100. And you can see now the bold styling isn't being applied to the span because it's been overridden by the more specific span styling. But we can change this. We can use this exclamation mark important to change this. So if we say that bold is now important, and then go back to the site. What's going on? I don't remember it. All right, yeah, that should work, surely. Huh. Now that is interesting indeed, because that should not be happening. It should be overriding the span style with the important style. Because we've added more important. So now I'm gonna have to fix that. Like fix it. We're gonna check a glorious Stack Overflow essentially. Ah, okay. It's a weird thing with style sheets now. So ignore I've said anything about that. We're not dealing with important anymore. You're not going to be using important for the rest of this tutorial. I love backtrack. Anyway, okay, so we have the idea that we have a hierarchy of styles, and more specific styles will override more broader styles. But obviously, like if you're just using tags like this is not ideal because you might want specific elements that have different styles to the overall element. Let's say we had another span. And we're gonna say this span is bold text here, right? We can see if we refresh this site, the bold text here, because it has the span styling applied to it, is not bold. So we need now a more specific way of. Are you raising your hand?
I want to ask why we have text here, there, all text here. Why we have?
Oh, because span displays inline, which is the thing I'll go about in a bit. Don't worry about inline in a minute. But yes,
That makes sense.
like as in the span doesn't display as a block. It displays as a. It displays on the same line as whatever current content that you kept there, right? So it just generates a line rather than a. It doesn't go to the new line automatically. If you wanted to go to the new line, you would use something like the break block, which is BR slash like that, right?
Mhm.
And then when you refresh the page, see the bold text is now on a new line. But the thing I'm saying should contain bold text is on a new line. But anyway, you need a more specific way of dealing with this element. And one of those ways of doing it is to create a class, right? So now we're going to say that this span class equals to bold text. And then we're going to give every element of this class bold text. So if we do this, yeah, it's just giving us the code essentially. But yes, the way you reference a class in a style sheet is dot followed by the style name, by the class name. And then all the elements of that class that have that class, that contain that class, will have the styling given in this definition, in this bracket. To distinguish it from the other bold text, we're also going to give it a color there. And now if we go back, we can see that because the class is more specific than the actual label, the element label, this span of this class has the color red and is bold, right? That makes sense, right? Just give on both of you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
He's typing.
I type.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Or like just yes or no is fine. Or if you have a question, just type the question. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Glad to hear it. All right, now we're going to move on to maybe what's more useful in the context of an application. We might want to restyle this input and this button because at the minute they look kind of very basic. They don't look like they could belong anywhere. And let's go over a couple of ways of restyling them, starting with the text input. The first thing we're going to do is because we know the input type is text, we could take the input type equals to text and then give it some particular style. We can give it, we'll remove the font size, we'll keep the padding. And what we're going to do is give it a border radius of 3 pixels. Right? And what this is going to do, padding is essentially, okay, I'm going to use my camera again here. Padding is if you have an element here, which takes up some space, right? An element can take up some space on your screen. If an element contains other elements, right? Like if a paragraph tag contains text or a span contains text, like here. The padding is the space between the thing inside the element and the element's edges. So this space is the padding. And if there's other elements outside this element that could touch the element but don't, let's say this is another element that's here. The space here between these two elements is the margin between the elements. So that's just a thing to know, right? And then you'll often see diagrams kind of like this, where you have this dashed outer box towards the margin box. And then you'll have the actual element here. And then you'll have this inner box called the padding box. And then this is the element here. Right. So essentially, by giving this input a padding, what we're going to do to it is essentially, previously, our input was like this. We had this, and then we had a text that goes here. So it could look like this, right? By adding padding, we're going to take this and then convert it into something like where this box inside that I'm drawing is invisible. It doesn't actually exist. But it's essentially what this box is the same as this box previously. It's the same size. And it would contain the text hello. And there's going to be a 5 pixel difference between the inner box and the outer box. Essentially, that's what we've done. And the border radius is at the corners, we're adding a radius. So we're adding rounded edges. And in this case, the radius is 3 pixels. So what we do is we go 3 pixels and 3 pixels. I'm going to round that entirely. Like this. So each corner is going to be rounded in that way. Which we will be able to see once you run it once you run the code. Right? So what we're going to do is go back to this page, do a refresh. And you can see that the edges are indeed slightly rounded. 3 pixels isn't very much, which is why the rounding isn't noticeable at all. You can see there is a rounding effect here that you can use.
Where it's just up.
Huh?
Where it's not fully black.
What do you mean why is it not fully black?
No, just expand it, maximize. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Is it all good?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, you have this, you could see this 3 pixel curve at the edges. And that's what we've done, essentially. Now, if you wanted fully rounded borders, so if you wanted something that looks like this, if you wanted an input that looked like this, like a pillbox almost, right? Yeah, if you wanted this sort of pillbox shape, what you have to do is set your border radius to half the height of the element. And you obviously can control the height of the element using the height command. That makes sense, right? So another thing we could do to style this input is to go, you could say that the height is 20 pixels, well, we can say 40 pixels high. We can say the padding is now going to be 20 pixels, just to be safe. No, 10 pixels. And then we could go border radius 20 pixels. And then if we refresh the page, oh, it's because the inner styling of, okay, no, buttons are weird. Buttons are really weird. No, sorry, text inputs are weird. They have different styling. But essentially, yeah, you can see it's much more rounded, it's taller, and has that sort of rounded, almost pillbox type shape, right? Now, but we're going to go over some examples in the rapid fire of what you could do with CSS and how you might use it in an app. Firstly, we're going to go by changing the background of things. So let's remove all our previous styling because why not? We'll also remove the bold weighting because that's not standard, but we'll leave the font family stuff. Now, and we'll also remove this bold text class and this span here. Another thing we might want to do is to keep this input at the center of the page. We want it always at the center, right? And the way to do that is to surround it by something called a div. And we're going to call this div we're going to give this div the ID, and ID is just more specific than a class again. ID is going to be the main container. And now we're going to use a little trick. We're going to reference this ID, which you do using the hash symbol. So we're going to go hash main container, and we're going to use a property called display, which affects how it's viewable on the screen. And we're going to say that it displays flex. And we're also going to use flex direction column because why? And you'll see what the difference in column and row is when I show you in a little bit. And we're going to say the width is 100%. And the height is also 100%. So now you can see that the width and height means it fills the screen, and we've set this display flex and flex direction column. And you'll see what that does now when we go back to this, right? Okay, what's going on? Why is it? Oh, it's because the display settings look monitor. Okay, let's just go. Instead of 100%, we should be strictly using VW for viewport width and VH for viewport height. The viewport being what the actual browser size is in pixels. So if you go back, okay, that should work. I'm not sure why it's not working. So let's inspect and try and find out what's going on here.
It should be center, yeah.
It should be, well, it should be, okay, so we have this main container, which is, if we select that, you can see that for some reason it's taking more than 100% of the viewport. Ah, okay. Here's a funny trick. Here's a funny trick I missed. Do you see, if you look closely, that there's a border outside this div, right? That is because the body has its own padding and the HTML has its own padding. And for stuff like this, you want to remove that padding. So we're going to go back here and we're going to go HTML and then body. And we're going to set the padding to 0. and the margin to 0. And now if you refresh, yeah, now you can see it behaves as expected. The div fills the screen, and then each of these elements is displayed one on each line, which is essentially ideal behavior. But we can go better. We can do better. We can say this. We can do more useful. Let's say. Now, what happens if we do flex direction row? You can see that it split the thing into multiple columns, and then it's given however much is required in each column for each item. But crucially, everything displays on a single row. And now we come to the bit where we actually center our content, because that's really what we're here for, right? Justify content center and align item center. Now, what these commands do, you'll see right now. And you'll see this looks a lot more reasonable than it did before, because we have that that is centered horizontally. So we have the space on the left is roughly equal to space on the right. And then we have that it's centered vertically, where the space on the top is equal to space on the bottom. I said it, why is this scroll bar? I have not done anything to remove the scroll bar. No. I mean, no, don't worry about it. It's a display thing rather than a actual page-based issue because we're streaming. So have the width and the height set like that. And then what we can do is okay, so again, we have these three items and they don't look very nice because they shouldn't be next to each other like this. They shouldn't be squashed up together. So what we're going to do is give each of the items in here a margin, right? So what we want is for all items in the main container, we want to give each item a margin. And the way we're going to do that is to go that. This statement here, hash main container, arrow, star, means that for every element directly inside main container, what we're going to do is we're going to say the margin is 10 px. Now, if we refresh again, we can see that everything's been spaced out 10 pixels. And this already looks a lot better and behaves a lot better.
Can we change the place, enter your name in the top?
You want the enter your name to be appear above the actual text. Sure. Okay. Now it gets more complicated because we're going to need another div. Because we have this main outer div keeps everything on the same row. You have one row and it just displays everything to the center. You justify it and align. Sure. But the second div we're going to need to make things appear on rows in the middle.
For every row, we need another div?
No. We just need another div inside here containing everything. So we're going to make a div here. We're going to close the div after this button. And now this div is just going to be the opposite. It's going to be, rather than flex direction being row, it's going to be flex direction column. So we're going to go ID equals to inner container because why not? And obviously, because all of the elements are now directly inside inner container rather than main container, we're going to set we're going to say for everything in inner container, we set the margin. All right. And now we have that. We can go. We can say for inner container. Oh, again, it's done it for me. We have the display is flex, the flex direction is column, and then we center everything within that div again as we've done previously. But this time it's going to be the flex direction column and if you remember how that worked, we had that all of the items displayed in rows. So it's like this. And this looks better, right? You have everything in the center and then everything's displayed kind of neatly, kind of nice. Now comes the tricky bit. Well, now comes this bit of tricky bit. Not really that tricky, honestly. But okay, now let's give some styling to all of these things, right? Because it's still a bunch of black text on a white page. Let's say you want a background color, right? So we're going to set the, clearly it's just going to be the background color to whatever we like.
Let's add to page dark mode and white mode.
What?
Dark mode and white mode.
Dark mode and white mode. Okay, you want a dark mode and white mode. We'll go to that in a bit. Get to that in a bit. But now, okay, this is how you set the page background. You set the background color of any element is using background color. And we can do a similar thing for our inner container. We can give our inner container a bit of a padding. And then we could do we can give it a background color and we can give it a border radius. So border radius meaning it's going to have rounded corners. The padding meaning there's going to be space between the edges of the inner container and the actual elements inside. And the background color being different means you'll be able to see it. Like this. Right? We have the spacing all round. And we have these rounded corners here. And we can increase the border radius to make it look, I don't know, a bit more cartoonish. Let's say we had 20 pixels. And you can see it becomes a lot more rounded in the center.
How can I add a design to backside here? Some of the design.
If you wanted to add,
logo, something else.
okay, if you wanted to add a design or like a logo or something, typically you're going to be using images. I haven't gone over images yet. But images is
Can't we do it without images? Just simple thing.
in general
I
we're
think,
using
yeah.
images for logos.
No, I know, but if it's simple, basic thing.
You could, but in general, an image is just easier.
Oh.
An image is just easier. So you get the image that you want to use, you get its source, and then you just do something like, let's say we wanted a logo and above our enter your name thing. So we're going to go img src equals 2. And we're going to give it a width and height quickly. But with height 200 pixels and then width 200 pixels. And then let's just take an image from the internet, right? And I'm just going to go logo. Just take an arbitrary logo from Google and then just, yeah, let's take this logo. This logo looks fine, right? So what we're going to,
logo.
yeah, it's an incredible logo. We're going to copy the link, copy link address. Well, we're going to go, sorry, not the link address, we're going to copy the image address. So we're going to copy the image address here, in this case, and then we're going to go back here, and we're going to say the SRC is that. Right? And we're going to refresh, and you can see this image is now here.
Wow.
That logo.
That's easy to nice.
Yeah. And then we can set the style
If it's not,
to width.
but if it's not on Google, what happened? How can I upload my photo here?
Good question, and that's static file handling. Static file handling gets a little bit more complicated because you need a static folder firstly. So let's just go about it actually. So we're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it static. And inside static, we're going to take our image. Yeah, let's just use this image. We're going to download this image. Save the image as test.avif. Okay, sure, it's an avif file, whatever that means. So we have that file with that file name, and we're going to go here and bring it into our static. the wrong folder. So, yes, we're going to move it into the static. Okay, so now you've moved it into the static. We can now reference it. We got to turn off our website first. We can now reference it by changing our source using the Django templating. And in this case, it's going to be static
I'm gonna write the file name.
test.avi. Yes, exactly. We're going to write the file name, but we don't have to worry about what folder it's contained in, as long as Django can detect the static folder. If Django cannot detect the static folder, then we have an issue. But if you run this file here, we're going to see that there's an invalid block tag on line 46 static. And that's because to use the static keyword, we need to load it into the program. We can't just use it directly. And that's a single line here. It goes at the top of the program, you cannot forget it. And if you see this particular error, you know you've forgotten to load the static. And it's as simple as load static. There. That's all you need. You need that at the top of your file, and then you can use static files. So if you refresh, you can see it now works.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Any questions so far? Not from you. How about you? I'm going to assume you're all good. All right. Just gonna clear this one. Okay. Okay. Next up, we're gonna be considering. What else do I add? What else should I add? How do I make this more complicated?
Good.
For now, okay. For now, let's go on to deployment, right? Okay. Let's say we had a completed website, right? And we've styled each page properly, and we have the correct routes and everything, so our page is fully functional. Yeah, I could add divs. I could add a div. Oh, div class. Oh, what was the issue with the div class that you had? I guess. Oh, okay. What is the difference between ID and class? ID is just more specific than class. Only one element in the HTML file is allowed to have it the same ID. You can't duplicate an ID in the same file. That's the idea behind using ID. However, it will not automatically terminate your. It will not automatically raise an error if you use the same ID across multiple components of your site. So again, be careful because it will mess up with your JavaScript and stuff like that. And speaking of that, let's go over some JavaScript of modifying HTML elements, right? And we'll take the example of a light mode versus a dark mode. For our dark mode, we're going to go very simple. The background of this becomes black, and then all text inside becomes white. That makes sense as a dark mode, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create an on-click listener. Now you can kind of see, so we have to select, first we'll make a button that switches to dark mode. And we're going to place it on the page on the top right. We want it to always be in the same position. We don't want it to change position based on the size of the page or whatever. We just want it to be top right corner. So the way to do that is to use position absolute. So you can use you can just use direct offsets to control how far it is along the page. So in this case, we're going to create a button. No, we're going to create a div. And we're going to use some inline styling because it's faster. We go div style, and we're going to say the div style is going to be height 40 pixels, width 40 pixels, border radius 20 pixels, background.
Can we write all of them together
Color.
in just one row?
Yes, you can do it in the one row as long as you separate with semicolons. That's an important thing with CSS. It's always separated by semicolons. I also forgot the colon here. Background color, we're gonna say it's black. Yo. Inline CSS has poor reusability. True, but this is a dark mode button. It's used exactly once. So it is fine in this instance. It's by pure poor reusability, that means you can't apply the styling to other elements that might want the same style. But because this is a dark mode, light mode toggler, each page will only have one of these with a very particular set of style that you wouldn't copy across multiple items. So it's all good. Background color black. And we're just going to give it an ID. We're going to say ID equals to dark mode toggler. And then we're going to, and this isn't really going to contain anything because we want it to be empty. Oh no, wait, so sorry, I forgot to do the position absolute. And position absolute also means it won't interfere with the positions of any other elements on the page. So we're going to do position absolute. Yeah, and then, okay. When you use position absolute, you're essentially, your way of controlling where an item is on the page is to use top, right, left, and bottom, which control how far it is away from the top, how far it is away from the right, how far it is from the left, and how far it is from the bottom, essentially. And you're talking about the edges here. So we're saying that the top edge is 10 pixels away from the top of the whole page, and from the right, we're moving 10 pixels left. And cursor pointer means that when we hover over it, the cursor is going to be a pointer. So we can run this web server again. And you can see in the top right, we have this button. And the cursor turns to a pointer when we're hovering over it. Obviously, it doesn't do anything yet because we haven't actually given it any functionality. Now we're going to give it functionality by, we want to record whenever it has been clicked. We want something to run. And the way to do that in modern JavaScript is by using an event listen. We're also going to make a variable to track whether it's currently in light mode or dark mode, and it starts up as light mode. So we're going to make a light mode equals to true. It's as simple as that. We're just creating a variable called light mode, which is true. And it's going to want to create the function for me. And we're not going to accept it. We're just going to type it ourselves. Document dot add event listener. Now, document dot add event listener is a function that takes in, firstly, the event, we want to select a particular item and then add the listener to the item. Sorry, that's my bad. We want to select the particular you want to select dark mode toggler. So we're going to do document.query selector, and we're going to select dark mode toggler. And this is the way that you would select any item which has the ID of dark mode toggler, and it will select one item if it's query selector. And then we can add an event listener to this. So we could do add event listener. And the event listener that we're going to want is the click event listener, because we've got, when we click the div, we want something to happen. So we're going to let that generate click. Now we're going to check. Firstly, we're going to check if light mode is true, right? If light mode is true, what we want is the actual, all we wanted, what we said anyway, all we wanted is the inner container, the document dot query selector, the inner container, which is an ID. So dot style dot background color equals to black, and we're going to say that the text in inner container, the actual color of the text is going to be white. Oh, we created a thing with ID in a container previously. This did. It just contains all the elements. And then you want me to do is set light mode to false, because now obviously it's dark mode, right? And then we just have the other case. The other case is when obviously light mode is false. So we're currently in dark mode. So then what we're going to want to do is set the inner container's background color to white and the text color to black, right? And we do that here. So let's go back to our home page and we refresh it. And then we click. You can see that the color changes to black, the background color changes to black, text changes to white. And we change it back. Maybe some text near the black dot. Sure. Yes, so people know its use. Typically, you're actually just going to be using an icon. You're going to find an image of like a moon or a sun and set it as the background image for that black dot, right? I'm just not going to bother to do that. But if you are looking for icons, there are good sites for icons, like Icons 8. Icons 8 contains a bunch of stuff, and we can search icons, for example, for stuff like the sun and no. So we can search it for the sun icon, right? And we can see these are all free to download. So this is actually a really useful tool to develop it, right? And some of these come with their own custom animations that you can run.
It's the best one.
Yes, and that's quite cool. You also
Use that one.
I'm not going to bother, I'll be honest. But it's the same thing as essentially setting the background. You keep the image inside the div. Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. Or I'm just going to ignore it for now. Another thing that you notice about the black dot, right? My laptop is overcharging. That's completely fine. Allow it. Yeah, it's just fine. These ways. I believe it's charging from the actual connection to the big screen that I'm using. So I can't do much about it. Yeah, any questions? Can you change it to white? Yes, this is exactly what I was about to do. it's essentially just another couple lines of code because obviously we have the dark, we can select the dark mode toggler. So if we take this document.query selector dark mode toggler, when it's light mode, then we change it to dark mode. When it's dark mode, we now want the background color to be white, right? Like here. And then obviously the reverse case, if it's dark mode and we change it to light mode, we want to change the color to black. And we can see that works very quickly. Click, it changes to white. And then we click again, it changes to black.
Winter animation.
I haven't kept it in. I didn't bother. I haven't bothered to keep the animation. I could, I should not. It's just. There's no point of keeping the animation in that because it's the same as embedding an image into the page. Functionally, I don't really need to show. But yes, in this case, we can change it to white and then back to black, or like whatever you choose, really. Yeah, and this is a way of getting a dark mode working. That is true. I also just grabbed it off Google though. Yeah, normally you should be using PNGs, by the way. If you're using PNGs, they can have a transparent background, which is ideal for most cases, nearly all cases. Where you want your logo to not actually have a background. But in this case, because it's just a demonstration, this is completely fine, I'd say. Yeah. So we have this page essentially. We can enter our name, we can click submit, and it will take us to the next page, and we're all good. Now let's get into some animations, right? And firstly, let's cover some basic animations. Let's. Okay, sure. Question? Yeah. All right, I'm going to continue talking about animations for a little bit. So when you're dealing with animations, when you're dealing with CSS animations, they work on the principle called keyframes. So we're going to create a animation which just what should I do? I'll move the image of the bird left and right a little bit. That's going to be animation. And we're going to call it shake bird. Sorry, it's at keyframes. Yeah, get the idea. And then at 0%, and essentially you deal with percentages, right? So at 0%, what we want is we have to use to shift things left and right relative to their current position. We use in CSS a feature called transform. A transform will take a translation and apply it directly. Or it could take a rotation, or it could take a combination of both of them. But in this case, we're just going to use translation. And you can check CSS documentation for more information on how to work with transform. In this case, we're going to start off with our transform, which has translated it minus 10 px and 0 px. And we're not going to rotate it at all. And then at 50%, we are going to have the transform of 0. We want our bird to be in its central position. 0. Okay, how do you think? How many steps are you? Okay, so essentially 100% should be the same as 0%. So at 50%, yes. Transform, translate 10 px, 0px.
Understood.
Oh, you're just doing a hand symbols. Fair enough. And then at 100% again, we're going to transform it back to minus 10px. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting left of its actual position of the image. We're going to move it 20 pixels to the right and then back 20 pixels to the left. And to apply this animation to the actual image, what we're going to do is we're going to give this image an ID. So we'll say ID equals to bird. And then we're going to the bird itself, we're going to use the animation keyword. And then each of these parameters has a specific meaning. Shake bird being the actual keyframes object that we want to use. The 0.5 seconds being how long we want each cycle of the animation to take. So essentially, because the keyframes only specify percentages, how long do you want it to take to go from 0 to 50 to 100? And in this case, it's 0.5 seconds. And how many times you want to repeat it is the third parameter. And we're going to say that's infinite. Let's see. No. I'm going to say that's it. So we're going to go back. I'm going to refresh. Yeah, and you can see the bird is now shaken. In the website, just don't do this, actually. This is really bad UX because it's very distracting. But it's just an example of how you might do something like that. Perhaps a more useful example is something for like if you're creating a loading spinner, right? A custom loading page. Let's say our bird is now it's going to rotate our bird as a spinner. So now we're going to create a keyframes rotate bird. And I believe this is going to fill it in for us. Yeah. So essentially, we're going to start off having rotated 0 degrees, and we're going to end up having rotated 360 degrees. Pretty self-explanatory, right? So to go from 0 to 360 is just going to be a full rotation. And obviously, you'll be in the same position again. So if you repeat the animation, it's just going to continue rotating. Asking a question. Oh, you didn't get the percentage. Okay. So essentially, when you have keyframes, you deal with 0 to 100%. And 100% means one cycle of the animation is done. 0% is the start of an animation. And you can choose however many points along this percentage line to indicate a state at that point. And then see what CSS will do is calculate how you would go from state to state to build that animation loop. Exactly. In the case of the shake bird, at 50%, it is in its original form. Because we say, oh no, sorry, no, in this case, sorry. At 50%, we're saying that the translation is 10px, 0px. So it's 10px to the right, and there's 0% vertical movement. But there's 0% vertical movement anyway, so that's fine. In this case, it's at 25% and 75% is at its original state. But that's calculated by the actual CSS, not something that we need to specify. So rotate bird is a lot simpler because we just go from 0 to 360, it's just a rotation. But instead of using the shake bird animation, if you were to use the rotate bird animation, and we'll make this a bit longer so it's not really fast. I'll answer your question in a second, sorry. 2 seconds into it. So let's go back. We now have a rotating bird, which rotates 360 degrees every 2 seconds. And that would work as a loading spinner. Yeah. To answer the thing where it only moves to the right and not to the left, because at 100% we specify that it's going to be back to the left. From 50% to 100%, it's moving the merge from the right to the left. Yeah. And obviously, it's more complex animations than this spinning effect and then this translation effect. I won't really go into them now because it can get very complicated and is beside the point for, I guess, what is an introductory sort of level program, especially for Hackathon. You're not really going to be doing. You shouldn't be spending your time building animations. Uh, the bird lost his head. No, that's fine. That's fine. It's we are confusing. We are making it very dizzy. The head's fine. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah, back to what I'm saying for now. Yes, you should not be spending your time building very complicated animations for a hackathon project, which is the reason I'm not going to be going into more complex animations with hundreds of keyframes where you control multiple things. Because for a hackathon, you should be prioritizing functionality. It should look clean. It should look like this is clean because it works well even with different screen sizes, right? Like when you shrink the screen, when you enlarge the screen, it behaves pretty well. But in general, you don't need to be building. Like even the spinner might be a bit much. Like you'll be probably able to tell what's going on if you just had a loading text in the center. So it's not actually a big deal. All right. What's a complex enough project for a hackathon like this one? Um, it depends on the no. That's not really the question here. The question is, are you complex compared to the other competitors' projects? So it kind of just depends on how much effort people keep in. If a team keeps in a lot of effort and the other teams don't match that effort, they look bad, obviously. But otherwise, it's no big deal. In general, you want to be focused. You want to just have a clean user interface and have. I don't necessarily want to give a project idea out. Okay, let's say you are building a financial simulation tool for the open track, right? You might want that financial simulation tool to be able to simulate uh, to have a couple of bots on it that simulate trading, right? And that could be complex enough for you, and it could be complex enough to win, provided you pitch it well and it satisfies some sort of market that you can quantify in some way. Um, in contrast, you can make a really, really complicated project that is effectively useless. So I wouldn't really. It's less about the complexity of the project and more about how usable is it and how well does it meet what you are planning to do. Right? Is my advice. Um, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. He really is, yeah. The question's gonna be crazy when it comes out. Let me know the question, I'll answer. Oh, okay. All right, we're all good then. There's no questions. All right, we're all cool. Let's move on. Let's move on to, I guess, some. So okay, so you got some basic JavaScript DOM interaction, document object model interaction, and we've gone over some basic CSS and basic animations. Now the key here is you're not actually designing for the web. You're designing for a mobile sort of experience. If we look at our current page in mobile, it would function okay. And you can see this in our inspect element thing. We can choose a particular dimension thing. And yeah, this looks alright, right? If you're on mobile. Is there something that actually doesn't work? So I can't think of one. You might need more content to the page to make this more clear. Let me just put something up real quick. I'm gonna add a bunch of text to make it clear that there are instances where it wouldn't work. So we're gonna create a span, and I'm just gonna fill it with text. And if you save that and go back to here, yeah, that's literally what I'm going to say. That's literally what I'm going over right now, is how to do element resizing according to screen size. Firstly, here's an issue. Now we have that this element is too large for the current screen. And that's because we haven't implemented proper wrapping. We haven't implemented a max width, and we haven't defined what happens when you overflow that max width. So let's do that now. For the inner container, we're going to say that when the okay, so we're going to say the max width first. We're going to say it is 40% of the screen. And we're going to say when it overflows in the x direction, so overflow x, when it overflows in the x direction, we're going to scroll, right? So when we refresh the page, we can now see that, hey, it behaves a lot better. It actually just scrolls. Still not ideal, obviously, but it is a lot better than what we had previously. And then maybe we want, as the page size shrinks, we want this box to take up a greater width of the page, right? So we're going to do screen. Okay, I'm going to check this quickly to make sure I'm correct. Screen size based CSS. It's add media. Add media. Okay. Now, we're going to go over what this does. So add media means you're making a conditional style based on, in this case, whether the screen exists and the max width of the screen is 600 pixels. Let's make it 900 pixels because why not? And then if the max width is up to 900 pixels, we're going to set the max width of the, we're going to say that inner container has a max width of 90%. We actually should drag this outside because that makes more sense. Is that how you do it? Is that how you do it? No. Let's see. Yeah, that's how you do it. Cool. I knew I was correct. Okay. Let me go back. Okay, if we go back and then out of our view, we can see it's not taking 90% of the screen. It's taking like 40% of the screen. And then if we, let's decrease it from 90, we'll set it to 70%. So now we refresh and then we resize it to mobile. We can see it's taking up a greater percentage of the screen width than previously. Questions? I mean, technically I do have that. This is just muscle memory. I have autosave turned on. I just, by muscle memory, I refresh the page. Oh no, wait, no. I think I do have to reset the page. I just don't like syncing it. So what you can do is run the web server using a command, and then have it so that you link it to an actual instance of a browser that's controlled by VS Code. I just don't like that. But sometimes it will auto update without me having to refresh the page. So it's, yeah. Okay, so back. We're just gonna close this out. And okay, I guess what I'll cover next is how you deploy, right? Because obviously that's a big question. How do you deploy a website? And I'll go with sort of the naive approach, and then I'll add extra details. Render.com is probably what I would recommend to deploy a Django application. It's the easiest deployment tool that I've seen, besides Python Anywhere, but Python Anywhere has limitations. Whereas this doesn't seem to have that many limitations. So we can get started. Well, I'm already logged in, so I'm going to go to my dashboard. But essentially, you link it to a GitHub repository, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to the GitHub. And then I am going to turn this into a GitHub repo. So I'm going to go to my source control. I am going to publish this folder to GitHub repository. And I'm going to make it a public repository so that I can link it to a website easier. And I'm not going to be including my virtual environment in this repo. I'm going to set to OK. Right. This is very convenient. I would recommend using the VS Code tools to work with Git because it's easier than memorizing commands. Does anyone have questions? What is going on? I think this is just, yeah, this is just GitHub being weird, so we're just going to ignore it actually. Yeah, that's fine. We're going to ignore that. We're going to be using GitHub Desktop in order to do this. Well, you know what? Let's do some commands. Let's do some commands. We're going to do git init. Right? And that initializes the empty repository here. The git file doesn't show. Git. Yeah, we're gonna git add all the files. And this git ignore contains /rem, so it won't include the virtual environment. But we're going to add all the other files. Then we're going to git commit dash m the initial. And now we've added stuff to our source tree. We've added all these files to our source tree, and now we're going to git push. Oh, I have to. Okay, I have to add a new remote repository. So git remote add. No, actually, let's just create a repository on GitHub and then work like this. So, okay, we'll go create a new repository. It's going to be a workshop 04. And we're going to make this public with no get ignored, no license, whatever, because I'm going to push to it directly. Okay, and then this is the actual URL for it. So we're going to git push to this URL. And we're going to see we got an error, so we're going to copy this command and do it again. Oh, I have to get to log into my account. That's the issue. It was the actual sign in command. Git sign in. This is not my computer, that's the issue. Sign in CMD. Yeah, I'm not gonna bother because this is essentially my dad's work computer, so that's why it's not working. So instead, you're gonna do the absolute monkey brain solution and drag all our files onto GitHub. Because that also works. So I'm gonna reveal them file explorer. We're gonna go straight to here. We're going to upload an existing file. I'm gonna drag the files. And upload them. Is it? Oh yeah, it is. It's just zooming in like crazy. Yeah, yeah. That's gonna be a fun moment for video viewers. Okay, we're adding the files via upload and commit to our main branch. Oh yeah, questions? Yes. This is ideal programming. Dragging files into GitHub instead of learning the Git terminal. No, it's not. I'm not learning the Git terminal. My dad's credentials are just encoded into this laptop. I don't want to mess with them. Yeah, that's it. Essentially. So we're gonna go back. Oh yeah, I forgot to create a requirements.txt allows a new server to set up the same virtual environment. Because obviously we're not going to keep this whole virtual environment in GitHub because it's a very big virtual environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to do pip freeze requirements.txt. All right, and we can see we've created a new requirements.txt file. Okay, yeah. See ya. All right. Okay, so we have these 4 things that essentially get generated, and we're going to go to GitHub and manually create a file in GitHub instead of dragging it in, essentially. Add file, we're going to create a file. We're going to create a requirements.txt, and we're going to enter the file contents there. And we're going to commit the changes directly to main. All right. So maybe the first instinct when deploying this is to go to render dashboard. You're going to add new. You're going to add a new web service. That makes sense, right? So we're going to add this web service from Git provider workshop 4. And this is a web service with this name, project. We don't need to bother about creating a project. Using Python, we go beyond based in main. It doesn't matter where we host it. Honestly, it's completely fine. And the root directory, we don't really want to be working in our root directory because our root directory just contains a folder called workshop 3. You want to be executing all our commands inside this directory. So what we're going to do is go say workshop 3, right? And when we go inside, we have this requirements.txt. And what we're going to say is our build command should be pip install -r requirements.txt. And we're going to do something similar here to what they've suggested, which is Gunicon. I'm going to find our WSGI file, essentially. And that would be living inside this workshop 3. So it's going to be and then it's going to be app.py, whiskg.py. So okay, Gunicon workshop 3.whiskg, essential. So we're referencing that WSGI.py file. Obviously, then we're running on free because I don't want to keep my card details. We don't need any environment variables for this. That's all fine. And so we're going to deploy this web service. What's the error? There's the error. Let me just check. What is the error? Why is it not telling me where the error is? Oh, I didn't type pip in. I did. Oh, it just didn't detect it. It didn't detect that. Okay, sure. And now we're going to see that it's starting to deploy. It's going to build. Now, there is going to be an error in this. And you'll see what the error is, and then we'll see how to fix it. But first, let's let it build. It will take like half a minute to a minute. So essentially, it's building the virtual environment again, and then it's installing Django. along with its dependencies, which is relatively fast because it's only Django that's needed, but will take a minute. You see that the build is successful. Now it's going to work on actually deploying it and running the application. You can see it failed. And it failed with Gunicorn commands not found. That's because Gunicorn is also a Python package, and the Python package must also be installed before using the command Gunicorn workshop free.wsgi. So essentially, all we have to do to fix this command is we go to our requirements.txt, we edit it, and we add Gunicorn below. And we can make changes, and that's it. What render will do is it will detect that we push to the repository again, and it's starting a new deploy for that particular commit. I'll get back.
It's 8.
It is indeed.
Huh? Didn't you finish?
No, we're working on deploying it.
What?
We're deploying the application to the internet.
Really?
Yes,
Why?
it's doing it. It's building. Let's reload the page and see how it's going.
Wow. Well, I should be.
It's still in progress.
I should be.
Sorry.
Fancy. What? They'll kill you.
Time to come in.
They're off you, man.
Yeah, time to come. All right. Yeah. All right. So it's going to take a little bit to deploy. Deploying is a longer process because it has to spin up the entire web server again. I'm gonna have the glorious zoom effect again on the camera. And we got another error. This is another very common error to encounter. Django.core.exceptions.disallowed host. All this means is that in our allowed hosts in the settings, we need to add this URL. So an allowed host is essentially what URLs can this website run on? Because of course one of the most annoying things is if you have a particular URL, like a particular other website that just runs a copy of your website on itself. You do not want that. You want to be able to control of your own site, so you have allowed hosts to only particular sites. So only the site that you own can use that site. what we're going to do is take this URL, because that's the URL that is trying to place our thing on. And we're going to go to our settings. Our settings belong to this main app that we have. We're going to edit our settings. And we're going to find allow plus. Allow plus is near the top, it's right here. And you just place it inside a string there, commit, and now it should work. All right. And now we have that fixed. There's actually there's another issue with this program. And the other issue with this program will be evident shortly once the disapply works. It's going to take another couple of minutes. Yeah, right. While we wait for this to run, how is your idea in particular going? How much progress have you made? I'll slice this out to do a recording for everyone else. But how is it going for you at the minute? The hack. Oh, very good. Okay. Yeah, and now with the longer time frame, that works nicely. Given that you have a week and a bit. Yeah, a week and a bit. Sounds good. All right. Anyway, yeah, we're just gonna wait for this. We're gonna wait for this to deploy. All right. And now you can see our service is live. So if we click this link, our page is on the internet. But you will notice our image disappeared, right? And if you inspect the image, you'll be able to kind of see why. So essentially, we got this div, right? This image. We got this image that routes to /static/test.aleph, which is fine normally, but when you deploy to the actual web, it's insufficient. Because the /static doesn't automatically get its own web route when you deploy. That's one of the most annoying bits about well, one of the most annoying bits, not really, but it's an annoying thing in Django that you're going to have to overcome, really. The way to overcome it is to use a package called white noise. So let's go back to our code, and then let's use white noise. So we're going to go back to and we're going to install. We're going to have white noise. We should remove the version number. And then we're going to go right back to our glorious settings.py, right? And now we need to add white noise to our installed apps. I do not remember the instructions off the top of my head. You do not need to remember the instructions off the top of your head. There are plenty of guides on how to do this online. So if you search white noise Django install, white noise specifically have provided a page on integrating white noise with your Django application. And you'll notice it's any, and like the only three options are white noise with Django, white noise with Flask, and then white noise with anything else. That Django is the main use case for this also for white noise. And what white noise does is it helps serve the static files to the actual internet. So your image becomes available on the internet. Yeah. Does it work if you use /DSRC directory? No. I'm assuming you're talking about the settings of this thing, right? When we kept the directory equals to workshop 3, right? That doesn't actually impact how the site functions. The issue is just static files for the image. Like here. No, because like technically they live in a folder called static. That static folder isn't exposed to the internet. So if you use /, it's still undefined. The issue is specifically when because you're hosting images on the internet, not because of the folder being incorrect or whatever. So, yes, we're going to go through this tutorial, and we're going to implement whitelist. So, firstly, we're going to take this. We're going to take the static root, and then slap it at the bottom of our glorious settings file. Let's just do this. Let's just implement this on the GitHub repo. So we're going to go settings. We're going to edit it. Also with this file, we're going to add static files. Right? That's our first stage. And then in our second thing, as part of your deploying application, you need to run /manage.py collect static to pull all your static files into static root. And that's about, and then we're good on the HTML. We just need to add white noise to our middleware. So that the middleware being the thing that processes the requests from the front end to /static, whatever, and then send it to our backend server that contains all of the images. So, firstly, let's commit our changes to the actual settings. And then here we go to add our white noise middleware. And very importantly, they do, like specifically, they say it goes under the security middleware. This must be the case. This will not work if you put white noise middleware above the security middleware. So we go to our middleware. Our security middleware is here, right? And we're just going to place our white noise middleware. And we're going to add that middleware. And that's essentially it. Except, of course, we probably want some compression so that images are less intense on our data usage for our program. So for storages, you just copy this and literally slap it in. And that's it. That's really it for sites like this, for a hackathon. Really, all you need to do is then we need to add storages. I believe storages shouldn't be able to add. Yeah, storages doesn't exist yet. So we just create storages. You can remove this comment here. And you just commit changes here. And that's all you need to do to set up white noise. it's just 3 steps. First, you change your static root, then you change your middleware that you use, and then you just add the storages so you can get compression on basic level compression when you're sending the images from the backend to the front end. If you go back to here and go to events, you can see that this deploy is currently running. We added our static files storage configuration. And if we wait for this to deploy, it should now work. The image should load. So we just wait for this. Let's refresh the page. I believe it's taking a bit too long. No, it's just being a bit slow. Yeah, it's just a risk when you're working with render, because you're working, especially in the free tier, it can be very slow in deployment. So it is what it is. No multiple. Oh, okay. I got the import one. Okay. Why does exist? Did I type it wrong? No. It install. Time to do a little debugging because that's not never expecting. Pip freeze. Okay, let's take this line and then paste it inside our requirements because So going back to our requirements, we're gonna edit it. I'm gonna add white to it. Then we're gonna commit. Now that we've added white noise, that should work. Let's go back to our event. I'm gonna have to wait for it to build again. Yay. Oh, hang on a minute. I think I forgot to add the deployment instruction. Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, you can see it works. Yay. That's it. That is it. Now our static files can be served to the front end. Yeah, and that's basically how you deploy a website via Django. Took a bit of trial and error, but we got there. Yeah, I might wrap the workshop up here. Any questions, I guess? Bootstrap styling, okay, I could teach bootstrap styling. I just find it a bit. I'm not sure there's much to teach. I can't lie. It's just following the tutorials. Yeah, it's like I don't know. No problem. Yeah, that's gonna be wrapping up this workshop. So we've covered some more complex JavaScript, covered like the beginnings of like how to do responsive CSS. If you were to do it manually, obviously there's frameworks like Bootstrap, which you can use to do it automatically. I don't think I'll need to cover them. They're pretty self-explanatory. And obviously, yeah, rudimentary dark mode, light mode, etc. Pretty cool. That's going to be it. Bye. I can end the music. Where is the music? We're gonna